Hello there, this is Rick Mercer with the town of Garner, and we're here for another episode of Garner Station, our occasional podcast that we do with notable folks around town. And you can watch us on YouTube on GTV11, and you can also listen to the podcast wherever you listen to your podcast and subscribe to them. So I'm really happy today to have with us now retired from the Garner Police Department, Sophia Sandlin, retired we're recording this on May 10th, so you actually retired just a few days ago, right?
April 30th, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So how's that feel?
Feels pretty good. Right now it just seems like I'm on vacation, so it hasn't quite sunk in yet, but feels pretty good.
Good.
Relaxing.
Yep, I bet. And we're also proud of what you had accomplished in your career. What you did for the community. I think you've always been one of our more recognizable officers and out in the community, and in many ways you've been one of the faces of the police department for a very long time. Yeah. And your entire law enforcement career was with the Garner PD?
Yes, I started here in December of 1993, and I stayed here until I retired on April 30th. Full career.
And what made you decide to get into law enforcement?
It's kind of odd. I went to college and I graduated with a degree in criminal justice, and my main objective at the time was to go into like probation, parole, or something within the court system. And my mother called me, after I graduated, of course, trying to get a job, and she called me and said they're hiring in Garner. At the time, I was actually in Kinston. My parents had moved to Kinston, so I was in Kinston at the time after I graduated. And so I came, she said, they're hiring up in Garner. And I had a sister that stayed up here in Raleigh. And so I applied for the police department. I applied for actually several of the police departments around in this area. And Garner was the first to call. And I took the position. It's not something that I thought about, like, people say I want, that's all I ever want to do. Actually, I hadn't really given law enforcement a thought. Even though I majored in criminal justice, law enforcement aspect it wasn't anything that I was against or didn't like. It's just that I just hadn't thought about that as being my career. And so I applied and got the job and fell in love with it. And figured out that that must have been what I was called to do. It was what I was called to do, and at first I was just going to stay here for like 5 years because I wanted to go to law school, but 5 years turned into 30, and so I didn't leave. So I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it that much. So when I got to the 5-year mark, I was still kind of enjoying it and doing it, and just stayed.
Yeah. What do you think? You said you fell in love with it. What do you think it was that really grabbed you?
I could say the excitement, but that's not totally everything. I think it was just being in the community, and Garner's been a great community to work for, and so I don't know. It's just a job. I just all the things that police officers do, meeting people, helping people. And that, I don't know, I just enjoyed doing that. And plus, I had co-workers that I enjoyed working with, so that helped a lot as well.
So what was Garner like back in the early mid-90s? I guess it was a lot different.
Yes, it was. I think when I first got here, it was like 30 some, it was in the early 30s as far as the number of officers that we had. And
now I think it's about how many? Just for reference.
It's about close to 70. I think it's about 68 to 70 now. So it's kind of doubled since I've been here. And I think that year that I came, I think it was like 7 of us that were hired, in '93. And so I don't know. It was a nice town. It was had nice neighborhoods. People knew each other. There was a lot of things happening. Of course, baseball and the sports and the parks that we have here. So we had a lot of things like that going on. White Oak Road was just 2 lanes when I got here. It was a 2-lane road, and
Country.
it was woods. It was country. It was a lot of places that were just wooded areas. I think when I first got here, Timber Drive ended at Buckingham. They hadn't finished the development of Timber Drive when I first got here, so we kind of like dead end there at Buckingham with Timber. And so now White Oak. Look at White Oak, and the community has grown. I think it may have been about 17, 18,000 maybe when I first came here, and it's just grown tremendously. It's changed too. I mean, just as far as like how. Just how the communities have changed. Things have changed. Some of the older neighborhoods you've had, the older parents have died, and the kids either sold the property or moved in, or so you had rental properties and things like that have taken place. So it's kind of changed the dynamics of family, but you still have the families that move in and still staying around.
Yeah, so you've gotten to know generations of families in Garner in some cases, haven't you?
I have. It's funny. When I first got here, and some of the neighborhoods had a lot of, I say Heather Hills had a lot of teenagers. It was it was one of those places where kids hung around a lot in that area and in South Garner Park, and now you don't have the teenagers around like then. Back then you just had a lot of teenagers, and they used to park in shopping centers and hang out, and talking to them, going up and talking to them and things like that. Now it's everybody's just.
They stay in and text each other.
Yeah, they're texting each other, or they're going somewhere, so it's not the same, like, back then you could drive around and talk to people in the parking lot, people sitting, the teenagers, or even at the parks, but now everybody's just like going, moving, going.
Yeah.
But it's changed, but it's still got that hometown feel, I guess you can say. People still kind of know everybody and know each other.
Yeah. In your career, your duties, I don't know if evolved is the right word, but you became really involved in community engagement stuff. That was part of your duties, right?
Well, I think for me that was something when I was hired Chief Moss, really pushed community policing and things like that, and that was great for me. Enjoyed getting out, talking to people in the neighborhood, talking to people in the businesses. So that's always been something that I like to do, and so I took to that, and that just kind of became who I was. I think that's probably why I liked doing the job, because that was part of the job that I could do and enjoy doing it. Just meeting the different people and learning different aspects of people's lives, and just making a connection with people. So that's always been something that I've done and enjoyed. In the department, I started out on patrol, as everyone does, and I spent the majority of my career on patrol. We have a career progression, which means I went from police officer to police officer 1, 2, 3, and first class officer, senior officer, and platoon leader, and then sergeant, all on patrol. So I went through the ranks before I was a supervisor, and I enjoyed it all. I was a field training officer, and at one point in time, I trained so many people that the people on my squad, I had trained half of them that were on my squad at the time. So and then I was a what you call CIT coordinator, which is crisis intervention team, which is what in law enforcement we train for how to deal with people with mental illnesses. So I was a coordinator for that. And then I worked in community services as the sergeant over that, which working with our SROs and doing things in the community, doing all the community events that we have at the department. So
the crisis intervention work, did you have to go and get training first before you could become the trainer? How'd that work?
Well, yeah, everyone pretty much in the department is kind of not required, but is encouraged that we do that. And the department wants everyone, of course, to go through the training. It's very helpful. You go through it's a 40-hour class that you go through, and everyone goes through it, mostly at Wake Tech, and you learn about how to deal with and understand people that are in mental health crisis. And it started in Wake County. I think it was in 2005, or maybe in 2007. But either way, it's just one of those classes that helps you to understand mental illness and how to best deal with people that you encounter that may be in a mental health crisis. So it's a very helpful class. And I just pretty much just coordinate for our department, coordinate officers going to the class, coordinate any extra training that we may have, refresher training and things like that.
Do you think that's made a real difference? Do you think that's helped the officers to de-escalate some situations or better understand what a person might be going through?
Yeah, I think so. At the time that I took it, I had been in law enforcement. At the time that it came on, I had been in law enforcement for a while, so I kind of learned a little bit, kind of like trial and error. But nonetheless, it still was helpful when I went through the class. Yes, it does. It helps you to kind of just understand, what people may be going through in a mental health state, and still trying to balance officer safety with making sure that you are, being understanding of people and what they're going through at the time. So yeah, it's quite helpful. It's very helpful to me, and all our officers are pretty. We're pretty. We do handle situations like that pretty well with the department. Most officers do.
Yeah. With some of the things that have been going on for the past year and the discussions about policing, one of the ideas that's been floated is to hire more like social workers or counselors or people with psychiatry backgrounds who could go out in those situations, perhaps not sworn officers or perhaps not armed, but maybe accompanying officers. Can you foresee something like that happening in
Well,
Garner?
it's not. In the first place, it wasn't something that we asked. We asked for. It's just something that, that happens in society, and we're usually the first ones that we have to respond to most situations like that. Yeah. But yes, it probably would be helpful. Hopefully, the powers that be will hire more people in the mental health field, and I'm sure in the right setting, it could probably be helpful. With the interactions, not always if it doesn't require the police go there, but mental health workers can respond and assist. We call sometimes. We do call them out. We have a mobile crisis number that we can call and have them respond if need be. So we do have that, but I'm sure it comes down to the safety too. With sometimes not every situation is safe. It doesn't mean that the person, mental health worker, may not feel comfortable going in a situation like that. It may not be the safest environment, but if we can go in there and calm the situation down without having to get into anything physical or anything like that, that's always the goal. That's always the first goal, is just trying to keep the situation calm.
As far as, you talked about Chief Moss, one of the earlier chiefs you worked under, really emphasizing community policing. Kind of what are you hear that as a phrase all the time. Kind of what does it mean? Because I would think in some sense all policing is community policing, right? Because you're out in the community. Kind of what does that mean? What are the keys to good community policing?
I think it's being engaged in the community, having the officers engaged in the community, which means that you sometimes have to get out of the car and just kind of talk to people, talk to people that you probably normally wouldn't talk to, and just, get out and just engage. And even if you go on a call, while you're handling the call or finishing the call, you still can talk to, people in the community or people out there, if you have the time and if it allows that. But it's just getting involved with the community, either by getting out of your car or getting involved with the community through activities that are happening in the community. Um, it is it's always helpful if people have seen you before or know you and have talked with you before. If they're having some type of situation, that can always be helpful. uh, it can be helpful in getting information from people um, about certain things that may be happening. That can so it just builds a trust. It builds a trust that's needed. um, and they feel like, even though you may have to come to do your job, if if they've talked to you and engaged with you in the community and know that you're okay, you're going to be fair with them, then you may have less of a problem.
Does the SRO and SRO, we use a lot of acronyms, the SRO mean school resource officers? Do you think that, I mean, that's a component of community policing too, ultimately, right?
Yes.
Has that helped?
Oh yes, that's great. I mean, the SRO's position is a great position. Having had to supervise the SROs, I got a better insight into how helpful they are in the schools, and just how uh, their presence in the schools and knowing the kids. And so when we have things that happen, they can, they're always there to give us information. And also, if the SROs like working, like during the summer when they're off, if they're out on the roads working and they have an incident or something dealing with some kids, the kids see them and they just like, automatically gravitate to them, and they help with a lot of situations that we may have with juveniles, just because the juveniles know them, trust them. All of our SROs usually have a great relationship with the kids in the school. They have a great bond. They recognize them. They talk to them. They know them. So when we have to deal with them, we call the SROs, and they usually can talk to them or calm it down or get information or whatever we may need. It's helpful to the officers that work the roads. So yeah, that's a vital thing.
So another issue with policing that that has arisen is diversifying police forces and making the police departments look more like the communities that they serve. I mean, in Garner, I know we still have, we're making great efforts, but there's still some work to do. Was it ever challenging or difficult for you coming up through the ranks in Garner in our department? And let's ask that first.
Well, I mean, I was the only black female in the whole department, so um, I wouldn't. That's always a challenge, because it's always. I didn't have anyone that looked like me, so you may not have that connection always. But I got along well with everyone that I worked with, so I never really had a serious problem. But it's always helpful to have someone that looks like you or understands you and understands, kind of where you may have come from. And it was always tough for me, because, well, it's tough for any black officer really, when you have to try to balance. It's a balancing act. You have to balance the fact that you're black, I'm a black female, and knowing my community and knowing the things that we have to go through, and trying to be a police officer and knowing what my job is. So sometimes it's tough. That was tough at various times, many times. But I always just leaned to what my integrity was, and I got a mantra that I live by that says always do the right thing. So I just try to always do the right thing and treat everyone fair as I possibly could, and that worked itself out. But sometimes it's pretty tough between being in the middle sometimes.
Yeah. Have you felt? I mean, did you feel more that way in the past year, or roughly past year, especially since the murder of George Floyd?
Well, I mean, Yeah, I mean, yeah, for over the last couple of years. My it's been kind of challenging. It's really been challenging and trying to um, strike a balance, and which is not always the case, not that easy. Um, so yeah, it's been quite a challenge in just making sure that I try to stay focused on what my objective is in my job, but yet still trying to stay true and uh, right with my community. So yeah, sometimes that yeah, it became very hard.
Um, I mean, I would assume, well, maybe I shouldn't assume, but one of the solutions is we need to work harder to diversify our police departments. I mean, do you see that as, part of the solution? And if so, what can we do to improve recruitment efforts?
I think that um, that can be very helpful. Getting more females. I didn't even throw that in there.
Yeah.
Being a female, black, and in between, yes. So being a female, getting more females, getting more minorities, yes, all that could be helpful. Um, so I guess you just have to try to touch on the mindset of where people are, and just try to, for my community, I would say it's best to try to reach out to those in my community and try to get them to understand the benefits of having, you know, someone black in the police department, someone that, when you go to a call, they can identify with you and may help some situations, which I know at times it worked for me. Um, and just getting people to understand that we can be more of a benefit, and if we want change within the system of law enforcement or the criminal justice system, then sometimes we got to be sitting at the table and we got to be there to help work on things, help people to see our perspectives and understand where we're coming from, and understand where our community is coming from. Um, and it's tough right now because not a lot of people anywhere are wanting to get in law enforcement. So it's tough all the way around. Period. Whether whether you're black or white, it's hard just trying to get good quality people in this job. I mean, it's just not, the tide isn't there right now. As it was when I first got here.
It was a lot different then.
Oh, when I first got here, we would have hundreds of applicants, and throughout the years, it's gotten less and less. And as you can see, most departments are struggling with the same thing, where you're not getting the candidates. I don't think the service field sometimes is what people make, because you're not going to make a lot of money. This job is just about giving and giving of yourself and sacrificing of yourself, and you're not going to make a whole lot. I mean, we make a decent living, but the tech jobs and other things like that make you more money is where most people going.
So what were the experiences and the things on the job that were the most rewarding for you? Was it those where we imagine what policing is from watching TV shows, and you're always dealing with these tense situations? Was it dealing with some of those situations, diffusing them? I mean, or was it other kind of touchy-feely community relation stuff that we don't see on the cop procedurals?
Well, I don't know. For me, I guess, like I said, I've been here for a while, and when I first started here, I used to deal with a lot of juveniles. And one time I thought I was a juvenile officer because I dealt with so many juveniles. And then years later, when some of them have graduated from high school and had to start their own families, and I see them, and they're like, "Oh, Sandlin, I wish I would have, listened to you," or "I wish this," or "I'm glad to see you. I'm turning my life around. I'm doing better," and this and that. That's very rewarding. For one, you feel old because you've grown, you've seen them when they were in like
Yeah.
middle school to junior high, in high school, and now they're coming back and they're adults and they're telling you, that I should listen to you, or you would, when you were talking to me, or this, and so you remember. That makes you feel like, well, you made some type of difference, you made some type of impact on them, because they remember you and they know that, and they say thank you, or whatever. So that's very rewarding. Or just helping someone for whatever situation, and seeing them later on, and either they're thanking you, or you see that they're doing a little bit better than what they were. Uh, that's always helpful. That's always like rewarding, and you feel, like you've done something. Because sometimes you don't see it right away, and sometimes people don't seem to appreciate what you've done, or it doesn't seem that way. And then you get those moments where people will come back and they recognize you. I remember you came to my house, or I remember you did this, and you were nice to me, or whatever, or you told me you fussed me out, but I appreciate it. So things like that are kind of rewarding. And Garner's always been a community that supported the police department, and we made sure to try to give them the best service that we could.
Yeah. Did you ever consider going elsewhere, like to a bigger department or something like that? You always felt home here?
Always, even within the job, you stay in the job long enough, you're like, I'm tired of this. Maybe I need to start looking. I never thought about going to another police department, because I felt like I got pretty much what I needed here. People change departments for different things, and I was happy here. Yeah, ups and downs, but I was, for the most part, I was happy here and satisfied with with what was going on. So I felt the need to stay, no need to go.
So you've never really wanted to leave Garner. You're really rooted in the community. I think you probably understand Garner as well as almost anybody. I bet.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, and you've obviously seen so much, but the country has gone through so much in the past year, in particular. There are always the underlying issues involving racial justice and policing in America. Are there any things you think Garner, either the police department or the community, can maybe take away from the past year, from the protest movements, from the calls for racial reckoning?
I think for the most part, we handle. Most officers, I can say here, are in knowing them, they're going to handle situations best and try to be fair to everyone. I've seen that, so I know that's something that we do, and I can say that I know that the officers try to do that. Do you have concerns and hope that no situation like that happens here? Yes, you do. It can happen, but I would say that I would feel that the officers would always try to do the right thing and the fair thing for most people, for everyone, pretty much everyone. And I think we in the department, we try to talk about those things and issues that are happening. I know we talk among ourselves, because I talk to officers all the time. We have conversations about it, and our thing is we just try to go out there and do the best we can, do our jobs, and like I said, treating everyone fair and with respect. But we still have a job to do. I wish more people understood what law enforcement does, so that it might help with some of the conflict. But as long as we continue to try to talk about the issues that we do have, and talk about officers' reaction, and keep our training. We do great training on situations, and just making sure that we just keep that before us, and talking about it, and making sure that officers understand what they need to do, and don't stop doing your job. Just do it. Just try to do it to the best of your ability, and being respectful to everyone.
And you were a field training officer, among
Yes.
other things. like, has that field training evolved over the years, with regard to, use of lethal force, various types of restraint techniques?
Well, I mean, that's just our training in general. I mean, our training. I guess we have a sergeant that's over our personnel and training, and we have a training officer that trains everyone in the department. So that's always been kind of part of our training as far as use of force and things like that. We try to do a lot of reality-based training, real life situations, and we train on how to maybe react to some of those things and thinking about things and your alternatives and just thinking about situations and not always thinking of lethal force, but knowing that may be something that you have to go to, but always trying to think of other ways that you can handle a situation. And for the most part, I think in our department we do that quite well.
Yeah. And there has been some implicit bias training within
Yes.
the department, right?
Yeah, we've that's been started. I don't know how many years now, but yeah, that's something that we have. I think pretty regularly every year. We have that training. So I mean, one thing I can say about Garner was another thing why I loved it is that we get a lot of good training. We get a lot of good training, and the training officers that we have are they go out and get training and bring it back, and we teach different ways of handling situations other than just lethal force. If we can, if that's not, if you can find an alternative, you try to not go straight to lethal force if you don't have to. So we've always had great training in Garner. That's one thing I will say. Be proud to say that we get good training.
Well, I'm so glad you could join us, and there's probably a lot we haven't talked about. Is there anything you want to add, or?
No, it's been great. It's just been great being in Garner working. I mean, it's been a great experience. I knew nothing about Garner at all when I came here, and I've grown to love the area and the people. I've met a lot of people throughout the years, and I was glad to serve the community, and I was thankful that of the support that the citizens gave me and the department. So I really appreciate it.
And we'll still see you around, right? Maybe?
Sometimes, yes.
At events or stuff?
Sometimes, yes.
Well, thanks for joining us, Sophia, and congratulations on your retirement. Hope you enjoy it. And Garner was very lucky to have you for as long as we did.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Well, take care, everyone. That wraps up this episode of Garner Station. You can, again, you can watch us on YouTube. You can go to anywhere you get your podcasts, listen, subscribe. We'll catch up with you next time on Garner Station. Take care, everyone.